Jigsaw. And again, the most important thing to do before you touch anything in a machine is make sure it's unplugged. I like to squeeze the trigger just to make sure that it's not on. I've unplugged it for certain. There's a bunch of different features on this Jigsaw. This is a Bosch, really good saw. At the very bottom here, what we have is a speed controller, and I can just turn that to change the quickness of the blade. At here, what we have is the aggressiveness of the blade. So when it's here, what the cutter does, it just goes straight up and down, and it cuts very quickly and very aggressively. If I want a very nice clean cut, I'll change that. And what it does, it makes the blade cut, instead of straight up and down, in a nice little arc like this. And when it cuts that way, you get a much cleaner cut. To install the bit in these ones, if you look underneath, you have to have what's called a T-shank piece. And all you have to do to get this in is ride in this little bearing, go straight down, and just push it till you hear a click. Make sure by pulling on it that it's locked in place. And now everything's good and ready to go. What I want you guys to do before you plug the machine in is make sure you squeeze the trigger so we know that the trigger lock isn't on. And I'm just gonna go here, plug it in, and test it. I'm gonna make sure both my hands are on the body of the machine because this blade is exposed and it goes in and out. So if I wanna see if it's running, both hands are on the body of the machine. I'll give it a quick squeeze, and I know my blade's installed correctly. I'll take a quick look at the Jigsaw, and this is one of our best tools for cutting. So great machine for cutting straight line, great machine for cutting curves, and even a good machine for cutting things out of the middle. What I want you to do always before using a Jigsaw is to squeeze the trigger. There is a trigger lock on this. If I squeeze the trigger and push that, the machine is now locked on. And if I plug it in, what will happen is that blade will start going. So make sure before you plug this in, always squeeze the trigger, and you'll hear a little click. Now I know it's unlocked, and I know for sure it's safe for me to plug in. Here, we looked a little bit earlier about what these do. If I'm gonna be cutting a piece of plywood or something I want nice, which is gonna be most of your stuff, I'm gonna put it all the way up here to the least aggressive setting. Down below here is our speed control. If I turn it, that little knob on the bottom, that sounds way faster, so now I know I'm going quick. Like anything else you're doing, the most important part that you need to take care of is that your work is securely clamped down. What you can run into with a problem here is if my clamp is there and I want to cut the whole piece off, I have to make sure my machine can get through. So I like to take the machine, put it where the cut's going to finish, and I know I need to slide this over a little bit. I want 2 clamps on there because I don't want it to pivot. So I'll have that sitting out, good. And here now I know I can put my second clamp on, and as I come through my cut, I'm not going to hit it. When you guys are cutting, if I want a straight line right here, what I want to make sure that I do is I don't cut off the pencil line. So I'm going to line up my cut very carefully. When you're cutting, I always want both your hands on top of the machine. If your hands are on top, there's no way you can get near the blade. When you're working with the Jigsaw, if you guys look down below here, you'll see the blade sticks out. You can't have someone holding the piece. If their hand's underneath, even though they can't see the blade, it's going up and down underneath and it will get you. Watch your legs underneath, watch your body, and make sure you're completely clear of that blade underneath. I'm gonna have my hands on top. As I start, if I squeeze the trigger just a little bit, it'll go slow. That'll let me get started. And then what I wanna do is increase the speed by squeezing the trigger. Look very carefully here. What you'll see is that just a little bit of that pencil line is still in place. I can always clean that up with a file. I can always cut it again if I have to, but I've kept my pencil line to keep my cut straight. So another great thing you can do with a Jigsaw, a lot of the stuff you're gonna be building, maybe you wanna cut a piece out on the inside, and what you have to do is drill out the corners first. So we did that earlier. Now, if I wanna cut inside to get this square out, I've made sure it's safely clamped to the table. I know that the table is not underneath because the blade's gonna stick through. And I just drilled a hole large enough that the blade can fit nice and safe right in there. Now we'll do a cut the same as I would normally. I'll start it. When I start it, I want to pull back to make sure that the blade isn't touching the wood. I can go ahead, turn it on, and then I can start my cut. I'm going to let it stop completely before I lift the saw up. And if I wanted to continue this, I could just turn it and clamp it until that middle piece falls out. One final thing that a Jigsaw is really good is it cuts curves. And I want you guys to take the time to do a good job drawing your curves. What I like to do is bend the ruler. If I'm going to line up and I want the edge curved here, rather than doing it freehand, I'll just bend the ruler really gently. I'll have my helper draw a line all the way along that edge. And then when I'm super happy that that's what I want, I've got a nice clean curve. So if you guys are ready to cut this, you're very close to the edge. And when you're cutting pieces that close to the edge, the machine isn't as stable because this side's not going to be on anything. What you have to do is keep your hand pressure here. So I'm still gonna have two hands on top, but I'm making sure that I'm pushing down so that all my pressure is lining up on this side of the machine. I can come through here, start my cut, but I keep pressure here rather than on this side. If I lean this way, it's not gonna cut straight because I'm so close to the edge. Here, I line up, I make sure my body is away from the room underneath. I'll start my cut.